Hello there, people of the internet. The sun is right in the wrong position, so I'm going to kind of angle myself over here to try to keep my face out of it. The amount of people who are in my comments telling me that they have hunted a deer with 303 British is probably more than everybody else who tells me about the cartridges that they hunt with besides 308 and 30-06 here inside the United States. There's a huge number of people who go into the comments and tell me that they hunt with 303 British, especially if they have a sporterized Enfield or something like that. Most of them are pretty gosh darn proud of it. I am doing this little video series where I talk about all these different cartridges and their applications for various hunting purposes. I'm also going through all of my firearms and talking about the history and development of them. If you're interested in either of these, I'm doing this in a effort to earn my way up to 100,000 subscribers. So if you would like to help me along with that, by all means, go ahead and subscribe, because that's what this is. I'm trying to come out with one of these videos every single day. Today we're talking about 303 British and using it for hunting. Now, I was under the impression that 303 British was going to be remarkably similar to 7.62 by 54 rimmed, because the everything is remarkably similar, except for the actual velocities that we're looking at. Whenever I was looking up numbers for 303 British to talk about the capabilities of the cartridges, they were not necessarily significantly less powerful than 54 rimmed, but on a general basis, they are going to be less powerful than 7.62 by 54 rimmed. That being said, 303 British is still an absolute powerhouse of a round, and by all means, a full power rifle cartridge, so it's nothing to scoff at. Now, whenever I give these numbers out and these grain weights out, bear in mind that commercial ammo is going to vary in velocities pretty dramatically depending on what brand of ammunition that you get, and there's a lot of things that go into these rounds. So whenever I give these numbers, it's going to be a rough estimation of what I've been able to piece together with all of the different variations in velocities and grain weights and whatnot that I found. All right, so 303 British, we're going to go ahead and start off with regular ball ammo, which is a 174 grain projectile. From what I've been able to find, that's going to travel at about 2,500-ish feet per second, and you're going to see muzzle energy at 2,350 foot-pounds of energy onto its target if you were to hit that target basically at point-blank range, and all the rounds energy gets transferred into that target. 2,350 foot-pounds of energy onto that target from a 174 grain bullet. That is a huge amount of energy onto the target, and that is more than adequate to be able to take out medium and even a substantial amount of large game. Now, if we bump that down to a little bit lighter weight projectile, I found that 168 grain projectiles tend to travel a little bit faster, anywhere from 50 to 100 feet faster than the 174 grains, because they're a little bit lighter weight. So those are going to travel 25, 50, 2,600 feet per second, and you have about 2,400 foot-pounds of energy transferred onto said target that you're firing at. And that, once again, is absolutely adequate amounts of energy transferred onto the target to be able to put that thing either into the dirt or onto your dinner table, whatever it is that you're looking to do with it. Now, we dumb that back a little bit further, and we got a 150 grain projectile, which seems to be what most people are going to whenever it comes to hunting purposes, with 308, basically with any 30 caliber projectiles, including 303 British. Most of your hunting that is done with these appears to be a 150 grain, although I have seen 174 grains out there as well. So 150 grain is going to travel at about 2,700 feet per second, going to have about 2,400 foot-pounds of energy onto its target, which, once again, absolutely enough to be able to handle pretty much everything here in North America. Now, if we go to the opposite end of the spectrum and we start getting into your heavier bullets, I have seen 180 grain projectiles for a 303. That's the heaviest I've seen in person, but I'm sure that they do make heavier projectiles for the 303 British. You'd have to be able to stabilize it with whatever twist rate is inside of those barrels, but I'm sure that they do make heavier weight bullets. But a 180 grain projectile, this is one that kind of fluctuated quite a bit with what I found. It travels anywhere from 2,400 to 2,450 feet per second, and it's going to have about 2,400 foot-pounds of energy onto its target. So it's going to be a heavier bullet traveling a little bit slower, and it's going to impact the target and put quite a bit of force onto it. Your heavier bullets are going to be able to penetrate deeper, simply because they have more mass to carry them along. So if you're going after larger game, I absolutely would recommend having those heavier weight projectiles. Those heavyweight projectiles are oftentimes going to hold themselves together simply because they have more matter inside of them. They're going to hold themselves together better than your lighter weight projectiles, which are less material, so they're going to fly apart easier. So anywhere from 150 to 180 grain, that is typically what I found with 303 British, but I'm sure that there's other variations of the cartridge out there. So now that all of that is said and done, basically all of the velocities I found and all the energy transfer onto the target is absolutely 110% adequate enough to be able to put pretty much anything in North America into the dirt. The 303 British round is 110% a full power rifle cartridge. You do not have to worry about having an underpowered shot with 303 British. Not quite as powerful as, say, 30-06 or 7.62 by 54 rimmed, or something like that, especially as you get into the heavier weight bullets. But it is 125%, 150% powerful enough, adequate enough to be able to handle nearly anything besides like maybe the largest of game. And even then you could probably do it with proper shot placement. Like if a rhino's charging at you or an elephant's coming at you or something like that, I wouldn't necessarily want to rely on 303 British, but I'm more than certain that it could be done. So now I have this gallon of water here, and I have a 174 grain projectile. We're going to go ahead and launch that downrange using my #1 Mark III. This is an original 1918 production #1 Mark III, fresh from World War I. So let's go ahead and well, send this gallon of water straight to hell, honestly. I imagine that if this is going to, do what it's going to do, we're probably going to turn this water into water vapor very rapidly. Last video I used this was a Mosin Nagant 54 rimmed, and this completely decimated that water jug. However, we were using a 148 grain projectile for 7.62 by 54 rimmed. This time we have a 140 or a 174 grain projectile for the 303 British. So heavier projectile, traveling a little bit slower. We might see more energy transferred onto the target. Because of that slower moving bullet, it's going to stay inside of that target longer because it's slower moving. So let's go ahead, readjust my camera here so you guys can actually see the range down there, and we'll set this down. So this is our 174 grain projectile. This particular one is made by PPU, and according to our chart here, this should be traveling at about 2,500 feet per second, and this should put about 2,350 foot-pounds of energy onto target. Well, I imagine it won't dump all of its energy onto target. It'll probably pass through and only dump some of its energy onto the target. But let's see just how much we have there. Sending it. Oh boy, that got me. Did you guys see the bottle cap fall out of the sky like 4 minutes later? That got me all wet. So none of the other cartridges managed to get me all wet. However, I think that the Mosin's water jug was blown into multiple pieces, and this one was not. We do have a huge crater on the ground though, compared to all the other cartridges. So that larger, heavier projectile definitely put a lot of energy into the dirt. It like dug a trench into the ground as opposed to everything else, which made like a fist-sized hole. But yeah, that's absolutely 110% powerful enough to handle pretty much everything. So that was awesome. I won't lie, that was awesome. 303 British, will recommend. Go ahead and use it for hunting if you feel like it. It is more than powerful enough to take care of basically everything. Okay, well, I think I've gone through all of like the normal cartridges, so now we're going to start going into some more oddball stuff, some more military surplus stuff that you don't necessarily see all the time, and we're going to talk about what the ideas are for hunting with those. So we'll dive into that on the next video. Thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. That sun is terrible. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I'm going to go ahead and pick this up and clean this up because the sun's going down. As you can tell, it's blinding me right now. Do you guys have any experience hunting with any of these military cartridges? If so, what cartridge do you use? I imagine a lot of people out there are just going to say, I hunt with a 30-06 or a 308 or something like that. Those are definitely your more common cartridges here in the US. But 303 Brit is a very popular one for the people who enjoy sporterized rifles, because I hear about that a lot, like a lot in the comments. Very, very popular. And for good reason, as we see there, it'll get the job done. Okay, bye guys, I'll see y'all later.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.